Give us your elevator pitch about who you are.
Okay, so good evening, guys. Nikki and Snap. Thank you for having me. I'm a lawyer. I currently work for an insurance company. Different schools. I went to UP for law school. I went to Ateneo, Carabar High School in Australia. I lived in Zamboanga City where I was born. Uh, I also went to the US for my master's. Took up political science in college and I went to UP for law. And I took my Master of Laws in Georgetown. I specialized in national security law. I've always wanted, or I was always interested in that field. When I got to work, I really focused on more on corporate.
What made you decide to pursue law? I mean, after college.
And I always saw this, there was this kind of nobility in it that people who were lawyers, at least the ones I knew personally, were very respectable people. Second, when I was in college, when I was studying, my father, my stepfather, was on trial for mutiny at that time. And I attended most of his court-martial sessions. And I got to see the most brilliant lawyers in the country argue before the court-martial. So I was so fascinated by the whole practice. So true enough, UP Law entrance exam came out. I made it. My journey to law school and my legal career started at that time.
So, grabing synchronicity dun, ha? Tumiming.
Actually, hindi ako nag-Ateneo exam eh. It was UP Law or nothing. Number one, mahal sa Ateneo. Pangalawa, I really wanted to go to UP. UP produced the most number of presidents or justices or senators yata in the country so far. So sabi ko, hindi ko ipapasa UP, di wag na lang. In fact, dasal ko nung silent retreat, sabi ko, Lord, kung magiging masamang tao lang ako, wag mo na ako ipasa sa UP. Para di na ako maging lawyer.
Ang galing.
Pumasa naman.
Nice.
Pumasa naman. So I think I'll find some goodness while practicing as a lawyer.
So Marks, bro, like I'm curious about, like you mentioned, you did the silent retreat. So maybe you can talk more about that. Why? What was the experience like?
I don't know if you joined the senior silent retreat, but they offer that in Ateneo. Parang they have this 5-day, 3-day retreat before graduation. Was so fascinated lang by the silence of it all, by the thought of being silent for 5 days. So I signed up for the 5-day one. Tapos we went to Mirador in Baguio. It was a very good experience. In fact, when I have my own personal crisis and my own personal troubles, I always go back to that experience. Those 5 days of silence have been very helpful. Ibang experience yun eh, tahimik ka, 5 araw. Tapos if you're familiar with Mirador, the Jesuit villa in Baguio, yung chapel nila overlooking I think it's La Union and then the West Philippine Sea. So you see the sunset from there, if I'm not mistaken.
It's like super
every
surreal.
afternoon, pagdating sa consecration, all that, ang sarap feeling na nandun ka, malamig, and then you see the sunset. Keep on going back to it whenever I have my own doubts, and my own questions, and my own crisis. I go back to that experience to remind me of who I am, what I stand for, what I want to do with my life. So masarap balikan yung times na yun. Very formative actually.
No, I totally relate. And the reason I asked was I did a similar thing naman. Like 2 years ago, I joined the Buddhist silent retreat for 10 days naman. And I guess I was just wondering how, and I think it's a very similar then. For me, when I look back at that was a very life-altering experience for me. Like it really formed like my true authentic thoughts, like without the noise. Because we had to surrender our gadgets, we couldn't read, we couldn't type.
Same.
Diba? Like, and we would be meditating lang for like hours in one day, and you're not even allowed to look at someone's eyes. Like that's such a deprivation of senses. Pero grabe yung benefits. Grabe talaga.
There's so much you'll discover in silence. Eh. Sarap. things in the proper perspective. So, yun, Ateneo offers that every year, I think, until now. No? They have this senior silent retreat. If there's anyone in college who, well, ngayon, obviously wala, but if there's anyone who's graduating or whatever, consider that. I strongly recommend.
Yeah.
Super nice.
Yeah, bro, totally. Throw it out there. Like a lot of times we always like just talk to whoever's listening. Like we mentioned like high schoolers, right? I mean, try to give advice to basically whoever is picking up the frequency. Yeah, that's super cool. I mean, it's really nice to hear how the Jesuit, I guess, what's the proper term for it? But like their guidance has led to experiences like that you can actually go back to and draw strength from, especially during times of like trial.
Actually, funnily enough, like I'm actually reading a book about Ignatian spirituality. Like surprisingly, a tito of mine lent it to me, like out of the blue, and I was like, okay, do I really want to read this? Parang I know this like grade school, high school, college, even like shoving it down our throats.
Umay.
Pero surprisingly though, because the Jesuit priest who wrote it, had a very fresh perspective on it. Parang very similar to what you said, Martin. Yung parang, how like parang just being in silence has a way of recalibrating the mind. He talked about like Ignatius de Loyola, like he was an indulgent
spiritual
man.
Exercises.
Exactly. I mean, he's coming from
the spiritual
very high
exercises,
stimulation, and the fact he was in a cave for a year, I think, or years, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, imagine your insights mo.
Diba?
Imagine your insights from that kind of isolation, diba? I really think like everyone in the world should be in isolation for at least a week, diba? And get some of the thought out of the head. Diba? I mean,
parang put it on your bucket list.
Actually, they should do that sa quarantine na lang.
Should be self-choice.
Actually.
I can see how that.
I mean, if you could spend 3-5 days without your gadgets, without anything, just praying or just walking in your garden or being silent, it would really help.
Really help talaga. 100%.
Big impact in your life.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people are actually going through that now with this whole situation. Alam mo yun? Parang not
although
consciously
makes it more difficult.
It does.
To be silent. Yeah.
But I think everyone sort of has their own version of this, like especially the last few months. I think for me personally, very challenging in terms of like the maybe dealing with the subconscious and like mental, emotional waves of erratic, I don't know, like behavior. And how have you been? Like, I guess, how were you? What headspace were you in before the lockdown, and how were you at right now?
I work for a very busy company. I'm also a lawyer, so I have my law firm. So I don't actively handle cases, but I ask about the pending matters and the pending cases, the pending projects that my colleagues in the firm are handling. So it's been a very hectic, busy life. So when the lockdown happened, it was still busy because I had to work pa rin. I had to go to the office. I slept there at times. I would go to the office every day.
I was just telling Nikki that you guys, diba, you stay at the office and then many people may not know this because Martin doesn't broadcast it, but he's one of the unsung heroes who helped get donations for the quarantine.
That's amazing, bro.
You also, Snap. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to help. It's really a collaborative effort.
Yeah,
everybody.
Help everybody out, help each other out. Exactly.
Yeah. But I think the situation now gives us the chance to serve. It gives us the chance to help others. It gives us a chance to reflect also on our own lives. There are times na you're so tired of the lockdown, you want things to go back to normal. At the same time, sometimes you just, there were days where I just appreciate the slow movement of things. It's a very refreshing break. Since I graduated from school, I went to my master's. It's been a very busy life since 2015. And parang now lang na naging medyo slow, naging medyo mahina yung takbo. But there are value-added plus points to that. So okay na naman. It's
Yeah,
an
we still earn
opportunity.
XP. We still earn XP. May experience points pa din, di ba?
Oo, mga kaibigan mo na hindi mo na nakakausap, you get to chat with them online. You notice that they're online. You notice them on Telegram. You notice them on Facebook. Dati you just you take them for granted. Now you get to have the time to get in
Interact.
touch, interact. So maraming magandang nangyari because of the lockdown. Although I would not be blind to the suffering that a lot of people had to go through because of this. I think it will always be part of the lockdown experience. Us having to witness people we know go through a lot of suffering, go through a lot of difficulty, losing their loved ones. One of my close-in staff members who's staying in the building, who's been working since the lockdown, his father died in Cebu. And he's actually my fraternity brother also. And he never got to see the dad. Last time he heard about the dad was, I think, 2 days or a few days before he passed away. Tapos, he was told na lang na the dad is in the hospital, in the ICU, and he never had the chance to grieve with his family. He's been working pa rin. There are many stories like that. I really sympathize with friends and people I know, people in general who go through very difficult experiences and a lot of suffering during this time also. So it's a mix of so many things. So a lot of things to learn from this experience.
Totally. The suffering is real for everyone, I think, to varying degrees. And I think it's important. Kailangan siya. I would like to believe it's the only way we're going to evolve. It's the only way we're going to be able to make some real impact, high impact change, which is, of course, going to be messy, but very, very necessary.
And it's a reminder to us, Rin, that this lockdown, this experience, this pandemic will leave indelible marks in all of us, in our humanity.
For sure.
This is something we will never forget till we die. This is also something we can look back to. We will remember this. We will remember what we did during this time. We will remember how we responded.
Like you said, we have to try to be better, find solutions, right? Dapat walang hero, dapat lahat.
Yes.
Parang it can be in a big way, it can be in a small way, it doesn't matter as long as you did something to try to make it better.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree. And it shouldn't be business as usual after this. I hope that we carry the good things and we apply the good things we've learned when things go back to normal. It cannot be the same.
I think we're seeing it now.
Change,
I mean,
definitely.
like, you can see some parts of the government, private sectors that are kind of like, taking advantage of the situation. You can see people speaking up, like people aren't being silent. And I think that's great. I mean, it sucks that these other, like parties are being very inhuman, but like the rest of humanity is screaming to, like change things. And I think that's, I hope people recognize that. That's a big, big stride forward. It's not a step backward at all.
Definitely. And I hope all of us will really come out of this, better, kinder, and a better country, a better society after this. And I'm very optimistic. I think the experience will leave an indelible mark in all of us. It's impossible
100%.
to forget.
Impossible. This is like the Great War or the Great Depression.
Our parents had martial law, our lolos and lolas had World War II.
Yeah.
Tayo, we have this pandemic to remind us about the essentials of life.
Exactly. And arguably, we're the most equipped. I mean, technology gives us communication, ways to do contact tracing, which is like, there was no phone. I mean, it was radio during the time of the war.
Yeah.
Even I think during martial law, it was still, no one was equipped with like platforms where they could exchange information on a real-time basis.
Yeah.
And we have this now. So, I mean, I honestly believe that it's up to everybody now in power, whether you're in power, you're not in power, to just utilize all of these different things and come up with solutions. I mean, you throw it out there.
But I think that's the beauty of ideas, diba? They're actual, like, in a way, like living organisms that jump from one person to another. When you don't jump on it, someone else is going to take it. And I think that's what gives us hope. Parang, like, okay, hindi mo kunin to, someone else is gonna do it na. And I think that's what's happening now. I mean, imagine those people who are just so passionate to help, to be of service. That's what gives you the most hope. Eh. Like people who have that drive to help. That's infectious talaga. It really does make things happen.
We've had Ondo, we were in college yata at the time, or I was in law school pala. And, people really found a way to help. So this is a prolonged version of a crisis like that. You see a lot of people trying to help out, a lot of people finding ways to be of service. Oh, when you see the nurses, the doctors, people in hospitals risking their own lives, you see the security guards, the janitors, the policemen, the military people in the streets trying to keep order. Very difficult to repay these guys for the service they're doing for the country and for all of us. Can you imagine pag wala sila, edi galit sila sa ibang bansa. But all of these people coming together, helping out, it's really an inspiring story to tell. Someday, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, it would be a very inspiring story to tell.
I love that we're all on the same boat when it comes to being optimistic about the future. Because there's so much fear on Facebook. Alam mo yun, like when people go on Zoom calls, and I don't know, it's refreshing to hear this because a lot of people are scared. But I'd like to think that it's going to be okay. It's going to get better. It's getting better now, day by day.
It's getting better. And we have to visualize the best possible scenario nga. Because if we don't, then it gets all muddy. Yeah. But if we all have a shared vision...
I agree. Just keep those positive thoughts. It'll happen.
Mm-hmm. But Marts, like, how about you? Like, what are things that you want to see, like, especially here in the country, like, moving for the next couple of years? Like, what are your, I don't know, like, hopes, dreams, maybe specific goals that you want, like, if you want to see happen in the Philippines?
I was having this discussion in another Zoom conversation with some friends, and my thoughts were to really try to institutionalize all of these reforms or all of these things we have in mind. It's good that we're here, we're all helping. It's good that we have this mindset. But it's also good to create good systems that can sustain itself over time. So when we're gone, our kids and grandkids can have a system to look back to and to pattern their movements after. To begin writing books again, it's good to propose good laws. It's good to propose good legislation, good policies for government, institutionalize certain protocols in hospitals or in the medical industry when it comes to pandemics. It's good to focus resources or channel resources on scientific research. All of these things are to me are very important. It has to be institutionalized. It cannot. For me, it's good that people are helping voluntarily out of our good spirits or out of our compassion or what have you. But I think at the end of the day, what's important is there are systems in place. Because there are people who are relying on systems, on government, on institutions to get by. And I think the more people having access to these institutions to help them, the better. Put yourself in the shoes of an unemployed father of 3 children living in Payatas or living in Baseco. No work, no food to give their children, nothing. Who do they go to? How do they survive? How do they feed their families? How do they get by day to day during a pandemic like this? I think
how do they live basically?
How do they live basically? How do they survive day to day? So I think this episode gives us a chance to really analyze and study a real life pandemic scenario in the Philippines and come up with the right solutions and institutions to respond to similar pandemics. So for example, maybe next time this happens, we will be having better institutions or better mechanisms to address situations like that. Nobody will go hungry. Ganito yung
Mm-hmm.
protocols, etc. And I don't blame
Benchmark
government.
streamlined. Yeah.
More streamlined, more scientific. I don't blame government because nobody anticipated a pandemic of this scale. Nobody could have anticipated something of this magnitude, right? But I think for our generation, the challenge is for us to really help in the crafting of sound policy, sound protocols, sound laws, legislation, wherever we are, even write books, no? Just to instruct the future generations na pag may ganito, ito yung mangyayari. Pag may ganito, ito yung dapat na response. Diba?
Mm-hmm.
For example, I was in my Zoom class last night. I still hold class. I teach in UP Law and San Beda Law. And we were discussing the UN Charter in my San Beda class. Tapos a lot of the provisions there had to do with the conventional military warfare, conventional, guns and bullets and cannons and planes and bombs. But very little discussion on biological, chemical, cyber attacks.
Warfare,
and, these modalities of warfare. And the guidebooks or the protocols will really have to be developed further to address these kinds of situations. So I was telling the class, I think it's about time for the thinkers of the world to really come together and find a way to address and respond to these types of situations and scenarios. Mm-hmm. How do you prevent this kind of situation from happening next time? Perhaps there would be better
the loss of life
response mechanisms, better equipment.
Exactly, with policies in place. Yeah.
Yes. So we learn from this and we get better. So going back to the question kanina, it's really, for me, it's about institutionalizing all of these lessons that we've learned. It's writing it down, talking about it, having discussions about it, so the next generation can learn from this. This is going to happen again. This won't be the last pandemic. This won't be the last crisis of this nature that will happen in our lifetimes, perhaps. The next generation better be prepared.
Definitely. I agree with you completely. I mean, how can they prepare for it if they don't know what to expect and don't have different systems and programs to be able to address specific types of situations, right?
Yeah. So, to me, yun yung pwedeng contribution ng generation natin. It's to really, come up with a guidebook, come up with protocols, policies for the future generations to adapt.
Oh man, if you need someone to brainstorm with, give me a call, bro. I'd be happy to throw some ideas.
We should write our thoughts down and try to think of ways
systemic.
And I really think na parang, this is just my opinion, but I feel like because this pandemic kind of opened up a lot of how do you say this? I guess it kind of allowed more people to branch out globally, and even in terms of communication, interactions, and who would think that you could actually attend a class in, let's say, Harvard online coming from the Philippines, you know what I mean? And they're offering free classes. So I just feel I know that there are people who are trying to do this, but it would be amazing to see more synergy between countries. Parang for me, I was talking to a friend of mine she's from the Philippines, but she moved to Vietnam last year, and she was telling me na parang they're back to normal now. No masks, no social distancing. It's back to real life.
Vietnam is very much progressive.
And the reason why, apparently, parang last year or 2 years ago, I think when the bird flu broke out, one of the main epicenters was in Vietnam. So because of that, they developed
prompted them.
They created a system for contact tracing that 60% of their population has already. So it's it's zero. They don't. That's what I heard the last time. But sana we can learn from that, diba? Or so people can share. Let's prepare this now. Let's, like you said, put in the
again
systems.
Best practices, right?
Diba?
Create benchmarks that serve as the basis for policy frameworks.
But I'm curious though, what if ordinary people, people who have normal jobs or let's say work for companies, if they have a strong desire to help in terms of suggesting an idea that could impact policy, like, how can a normal Filipino do that? Like, I wouldn't know what, like, if I had an idea, who would I ask? Who can I approach na, uy, may idea ako, like, but I don't know how to navigate this.
A lot of people would give you the staple answer, right? Your politicians, right? Your congressmen, right? Your senators, whatever. But I think another avenue would be to either join or write an active NGO who really cares about these things, who really cares about these advocacies, and give them these ideas and ask them to help you push for it. Because I think NGOs in the Philippines are quite active. No?
Nice.
They're good lobbyists. They can push certain things, push for certain advocacies. I think that would help a lot. NGOs would help a lot. And perhaps to have more discussions and have more online thought discussions with people. And these discussions kasi evolve. These ideas evolve and they crystallize
Exactly.
into actual pieces of legislation or actual pieces of policies. So I think keep the discussion going. I mean, even in my class, I try to make this discussion more extensive because that one of the students may have a good idea that could
That's it.
crystallize into something better.
Galing.
Yeah, create action points, diba? Once, because after you have discussions, eventually that it could spark an idea that would have an actual action point, and when you have an action point, then all of a sudden it becomes measurable,
Yeah,
and then you can execute. Because you
yeah.
have to be able to measure a system or a program to be able to know how effective it is, diba? The closed loop.
Definitely.
Diba? Yeah, once you apply, you study it, and then you correct it, and then you run the system again. Optimize,
I think
continue to optimize.
locally, no, Baguio yata is a very good case study
I heard
on
about
how
that.
they managed
I've been
to
seeing.
how they managed to really minimize contamination and the spread of the virus. General Magalong, the mayor of Baguio, yata has been doing a really good job. I think contact tracing and all of these
Yeah,
precautionary.
using technology, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they're very efficient at it.
Yeah.
No, galing. I actually also read another article. I've been following this like Igorot community. It's like a web
Okay.
community that they have, and then they were talking about like like not just Baguio but the mountain province. How it wasn't that severe the outbreak there, and they were talking about how like the Igorots who had very deep roots who were still practicing like ancient rituals. Like they had a sort of like I guess kind of like a bayanihan approach. Na parang they were like when the government was sending aid down to them, they were like, no, bring it down to the cities. Kasi parang we're
To the ones who need it.
because we're
Yeah,
self-sustainable
they
na.
had food.
Hindi
Yeah,
siya,
they had food.
hindi siya pa martyr. And I think
Yeah.
they were saying
Yeah,
that
they had food.
the Igorot culture, because of that kind of mentality, there's so much service towards the other that it totally impacted the healthcare system and the outbreak as well. So I think I don't know, like I've been pretty fascinated kasi with these tribal
Yeah, the
lifestyles,
IPs, indigenous
beliefs,
people.
and
Yeah.
how like they work very symbiotically with the what do you call
With
this,
nature.
with nature, diba? And parang
Yeah.
and I think
Like
that
Raf
should
Junisho is into that. Yeah.
I
yeah
see.
yeah.
Facebook.
Parang I saw his post the other day. He was up in the mountains planting some trees in Zambales. Like that's also, yun ang may action point, measurable.
Galing.
3,000 trees na yata sila, di ba? Thousands and thousands.
And then actually, like I just found out from one of my friends who lives in Palawan. They live like maybe a 10-minute walk from Nagtabon Beach or Nagtabon. So it's like a 2-hour drive from Puerto Princesa. Like they have like a small community, like off the grid community by the mountain, and it's basically an eco village where a lot of Filipinos and foreigners sort of live freely. Like there's like no concept of money. Parang they grow their own food.
Barter lang.
Yeah, puro barter. Very plant based. So what they did, since a lot of the neighboring towns now got hit, they didn't have any jobs. Galing, what they did, they created a seed bank. parang they basically gave them seedlings of produce that they can grow, and they taught them pa how to grow. As in, they went to their bayan in like I think some area. So now they have sustainable.
There's of course, food source.
Galing.
Food
And I
security.
think come on, you can do that here in Manila. Totally possible.
Yeah, but Nikki, you know well.
But I know it's
we tried it. We tried it in Batangas, right? We tried it. Just so Martin has context. So in Dipolo, we created like a program where basic things, tomato, papaya, sile, like almost anything you can plant anywhere in the Philippines, and you sell it at farm gate price to the locality. Okay. So it kind of makes the cost for the consumer less, while the local economic activity kind of gets a jump start. Kasi nga, you have employment, and you're promoting trade, and you're cutting out like the whole trader mechanism where they get a lot of goods from one area and then transport it for an exorbitant cost. But when we tried to do it in Batangas, we encountered many forms of like difficulty and challenges. So we parked that idea for a bit.
I think it's always good to have a backyard farm or backyard garden.
Agreed.
For your daily needs, for yourself.
Now you're teaching you're still teaching online classes, and like I think that's because I'm also teaching, so I'm curious about in the academic side of things, like what has the experience been like from the students, you as well as a teacher, like what's it been like?
It's been very challenging because we're so used to the face-to-face on actual classes. For my class in UP, what I did was I just gave them requirements to do digests of their entire outline, and something they could use for the bar exams. For BEDA naman, it was a bit different. No? So for us to maximize technology, we have individual reports, tapos we have interactions after. It's difficult lang kasi to moderate kasi sometimes sabay-sabay yung idea, you don't know who went first. But we try to just make it as chronological or as systematic as possible to get everyone to participate. But it's been very challenging. I think teaching was really meant to be face-to-face. No?
I agree.
It was meant to be actual. There's the spirit of a person that you witness when
the digital does not capture whatever that is, right? The digital does not.
Parang relationship siya with the student when you teach it. So you miss out on that. You miss out on that personal touch or the personal reaction. Although naman, in Zoom classes, you get heightened, how do I say it? You get to notice the reactions. Kasi di ba you get to see the facial reactions of everybody. So,
the quirks. The quirks.
You notice pag may nakasimangot, you notice pag may nagtanod, mga gano'n. It's something you wouldn't notice when you're teaching live kasi syempre your attention is diffused. Pero ito, you get to notice the individual tiles or the individual screens.
It's really an experience talaga. I think our true characters come out in Zoom rin.
You can only front so much. I mean, over time, especially like formulas and a lot of like, I would say systems and programs don't take into account the factor of time. That's why, especially very protectionist policy, like it's meant to just optimize one system without taking into account like how maybe over a period of time, there are things that would drastically change that would require the system to get upgraded. Or like new policies should be added into that framework to optimize it, to adapt to the time. I mean, correct me if you think I'm wrong, Marts, but like based on what you said, I think that's a good alignment, right?
Ito on another setup naman. We've been having our board meetings through Zoom also. So all the directors and all the management officers are all on Zoom, no? Tapos we all have our discussions about the business and about the financial reports, everything also online. So it's very different when it's face to face, actual, and when it's through Zoom. Sometimes kasi through the cyber platforms, people tend to be more free in expressing their opinions. Or kasi parang wala, you're just in front of a computer or
Device.
iPad
Yeah, for
or
sure.
of a device. Pero pag face-to-face, minsan mahihiya ka to bring it up or mahihiya ka to make a comment on something. But when it's a device in front of you, you tend to be more liberal in your thoughts or ideas. Meaning to say, you say what you want to say.
Isn't that the irony though? Na parang we need this kind of technology to get us out of our insecurities and overthinking.
I actually think it's poetic rather than ironic. Because
it is poetic.
Imagine if it's like a reverse. It's a reverse veil. It's a reverse veil.
Yeah. No, but the thing is. Snap, I know you watched the Elon Musk podcast. Mark, did you watch the Joe Rogan Elon Musk podcast recently?
I watched it a few times yata.
Pero like that part kasi where he basically talks about artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and the second one. There's a new one.
So basically in 5 years now, they will start Neuralink, his company, is going to be able to synergize AI with the human brain, and you'll basically become like a supercomputer. Like you can at will. You're gonna be able to kind of like tap into like different sources, and of course to
give you context, just so that Martz doesn't get lost.
Go.
So Elon Musk has a theory that because of our phones, we're technically kind of like cyborgs. So
yes, exactly.
You can use voice to search. It's like, imagine you have a hard drive and you have access to international data within seconds. So parang he's just trying to figure out how to make the most of that technology and then integrate it with the brain.
Wow. But actually, what for me kasi, I remember before I was very scared of artificial intelligence. Na parang I was even thinking, why would I want that? Like, we should stay analog. We should stay grounded. But when I heard that interview, and I don't know if it's because of this whole pandemic thing, but it made me realize maybe this is the next spiritual revolution. You know what I mean? Na parang this may be the time wherein we will have the technology to give us the ability to transcend time, to transcend space. And if you think about it,
right?
It's happening right now. The fact that the three of us are talking at the same time through a screen, being recorded, you know what I mean? It's insane if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like it's really, this is already a cyborg experience, diba?
Yeah.
If you told me this in high school, I would have been like no
way, man.
That's impossible.
But
we're on MIRC right now. Way.
Yeah. Definitely, and imagine all of these footprints will be here even after we die.
Exactly.
I mean, all of these discussions, our thoughts, our facial expressions, our voice will stay even after we go. So it's a bit of a... Actually, I want to share this one thing we're doing now. No? I have over 1,000 employees yata. My Coco Life plus my subsidiaries is over 1,000. It's rare for the normal employee department to get to meet the president or to get to meet the vice president, etc. No? But this time, we have this thing called kwentuhan sessions. And a lot of our employees tune into that. And they parang Zoom din. I think Zoom yung ginagamit. Or one of those apps.
Nice.
Or Zoom or whatever. So they sign in, tapos begin the kwentuhan session. And you have everyday employees asking me questions, personal questions. But they wouldn't ask me how I'd spend my weekends. But this time, with this app, it's kind of leveling things. It makes people... It's an equalizer. It makes people on the same... We're all just one screen. I mean, I'm one screen.
Exactly.
Walang hierarchy.
Wala. And it's easy for them to
reverse veil nga.
Reverse veil.
Veil talaga siya.
That will be the caption, reverse veil.
So it's the security guard or the janitor can access the Zoom session, listen into the discussion, and ask me questions they wouldn't get to ask on a normal day. So I think it's great in that way.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
galing ng engagement factor nun, pare, for sure. I'm sure like it would, because they can share it.
That's literally transforming people.
And we do it twice a week, no, not just with myself, but with the other officers.
That's great.
So it was a very powerful tool, no, to communicate with everybody. And I think the employees feel a sense of security that they get to reach out to their bosses, they get to reach out to their employers on a regular basis, and that's how we've been operating since the lockdown. We get to communicate.
Galing. Like, I really hope more companies are actually not even more. I hope other companies are doing the same thing, because like that's huge, man. Like, like the directors and all across the boards, engaging each other. Parang that's unheard of, to be honest. That's like unheard of.
You can't beat that. You can't beat that sense of connectiveness. Because there's connectedness and there's an actual bond. There's something disarming about it that makes everybody feel the whole we are one thing.
Maganda siya eh. I mean, we have a moderator, tapos parang naka-line up yung mga magtatanong ng questions, and everyone would get to ask their questions live. It's like having a live free TV show, di ba? Parang they can ask you whatever they want to ask you, and you can give them your answers live, unedited.
Do you have any favorite insights that stories that you've heard that are inspiring or like striking?
Ang dami for me, ang daming mga day-to-day incidents that really inspire me. I have around probably 20 to 30 employees who continue to sleep in the office, who practically live there. When I go to work in the morning, if I don't sleep there, so I go to work in the morning, I see them in their pajamas or their house clothes working. That's how devoted they are. Kasi kami, we process healthcare claims. So we make sure that all of these things are covered. We approve yung approvals ng claims and all that. When they bill out, when they check out, we also make sure that the company settles their bills with the hospital. Pag may namamatay din, we make sure that the claims, the families who go to the office to claim their death benefit get attended to. All of these things. The employees really understand the kind of responsibilities they have also to the community, to the people they serve. Kaya they made the sacrifice to rin of staying in the office and sleeping there. These are everyday heroes that we see. And I'm sure a lot of people have bigger, more heroic stories out there. I'm very grateful for people like them.
No, that's really
unsung
heroes talaga.
Everybody's helping out.
What are you like looking forward to, like as things start to get, I don't know, not go back to normal, but like go back to a place that feels the new normal. Like, what are you looking forward to?
I only saw my family once during the whole since the lockdown. Masks and all that, just to make sure I wasn't contaminating anybody. Assuming I had. I didn't want to take chances. I look forward to, spending more time with friends, with family. I really value the face-to-face action.
It's the best, man.
The inuman.
Same.
The things we used to take for granted. No?
I was just about to say, you took the words right out of my mouth.
We took them for granted talaga. We really did.
Kasi after college, diba, everyone got busy. Diba? I mean, ako went to law school. Some people started working. Some people relocated. They got busy with their careers. So minsan may mag-aaya. Tapos tatamarin ka, you won't go. Becomes a habit of not going. Tapos you barely catch up na with your friends. You miss out on the real fun, the real face-to-face interaction, the handshakes, the hugs, with your family, with your friends. I look forward to that today, to really, being with them in person.
Same. The genuine interactions, right?
Yeah. Sarap nun. That's gonna feel so good.
Soon.
Sana.
Malapit na yan.
May vaccine or whatever.
Yeah. That's it. Because Pfizer just announced, right? They just
September,
announced.
October.
Wow.
Yeah. So October. I told you October, right? I'm in one of the other in the previous conversations. Like we were trying to kind of make an educated guess as to more or less when it would be. But
roll out better release.
Yeah.
I think rollout release.
Rollout release. Wow.
And then I'm sure it'll take time
Yeah.
to get to us, no? Siyempre, mauna yung Europe and US siguro. I don't
Of
know.
course, yeah. We know naman how that works.
But I hope that they produce it fast enough. Really
I think so.
hoping.
Economies of scale should be more than enough reason for them to, because again, it goes back to systems. Just to before we end, Nikki.
Yeah.
If you have data that can say you manufacture this many and you roll out this many, and then you supplement it again with a program that has the tracking of who has the shot and who does not, and then all of a sudden you already have data to again set up policy framework for that system.
Yeah.
So it's not just like operating like a Frankenstein. It's really optimized, and ideally everybody gets the vaccination at a certain point, so as to avoid like the loss of life that's unnecessary.
Well, Marts, thanks, bro. Thanks so much for
Pare, thank you.
That was a very
Martin.
stimulating
Sobrang
conversation.
Thank you, bro.
It's an honor to
Sobra.
get to talk to you guys. Si Nicky, I haven't seen him since
Since college, bro.
Since college.
college.
I was telling stuff we were it's in zoology.
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 I barely passed that class, man. I had to like suck up.
Grabe. Yeah, it's been a while. And ang dami na nangyayari sa mga buhay natin since college.
Sobra, bro.
Oh, man.
Sobra.
A lot of things, ups and downs.
A lot of life.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, XP. It's all the experience points.
Yeah.
Right? We're all learning different skills.
Exactly. But hopefully,
After this,
man.
I'll host a dinner or an inuman in my house after all of this.
Game, bro. Game.
Oh, pare, I'm there.
Set up nun. Game.
Rapid
there
test.
for sure.
Oh.
Yeah.
di ba?
Tama. Mabilis lang eh.
Bilis
15
lang naman.
minutes, di ba?
Yeah. But it's not
Mabilis lang.
accurate. I don't know, but I hear it's not accurate.
Yeah, apparently the argument is that it detects the antibodies, right? Not the initial symptoms.
That's what I heard.
So if you haven't built up the antibodies to it, but you're already infected.
Yeah.
False
It's a tough part.
negative.
Kailangan may swab test.
Swab test pa rin. I think swab test yung accurate.
That's what they really need to like expedite, I think.
Yeah. More swab tests.
Yep.
But
Mass
yeah,
testing talaga.
Thank you for having me here. You guys, it's refreshing to talk to you guys.
Same here, bro. Thanks so much,
great.
man.
It was great. Salamat ulit,
Yeah.
Martin.
Thank you, Snap.
Thank you.
Salamat.
For sure,
Thanks,
brother.
Mark.
For sure. Zoominuman soon.
Sige.
Take care, bro.
Okay, take care, guys. Thank you.
See you, Mark.
Take care, bro. Stay
Good
safe.
night.
Stay safe,
Good night.
brother.